Okay, it's Thursday. A lot of news. And there's one more set of squats. Matt Binder, Mashable. Microsoft plans to drop Twitter support from its ad platform on April 25th. Users won't be able to access or manage Twitter accounts through Microsoft's tool. Related, Michael Kahn, PC Mag. After Microsoft Advertising said it was dropping Twitter support, Elon Musk tweeted that it's quote unquote lawsuit time over training quote unquote illegally using Twitter data. We'll see whether this turns into a teapot tempest, like many things that Elon says, or whether there's something real here. I don't know what the sort of install base or user base of Microsoft's advertising product is, but I imagine it's substantial. And the idea that that tool will no longer allow its users to manipulate Twitter's advertising tools, or if you're a business and you're using Microsoft's tool to manage how you advertise out across the various channels, that Twitter is no longer one of those channels. Seems like a net negative for users. There's certainly a gamble here that it seems like Microsoft is making, which is how much is our user base really going to miss it? They may know, right? They may have enough data to understand that while there will be a vocal minority of people who complain about not being able to have this functionality anymore, that in the grand scheme of things, it may not represent that much of a hit to the business. Elon making the statement that would indicate he thinks Microsoft's ad products and therefore its advertising business has benefited from having access to Twitter. Yeah, but how do you make that stick? I don't know. Bloomberg, the EU Parliament approves the Markets in Crypto Assets, or MiCA, regulation for the crypto industry, with rules for stablecoins set to apply from July 2024. There's a sort of crisis of authority aroma that I get whenever I see stories about state governments or state actors attempting to craft regulation that sort of slipstreams some of what uh, blockchain technology has enabled, some of the products it has enabled into the regulatory framework that it exercises. Are there legitimate needs for that? Yeah, absolutely. But I personally can't help but see a little bit of, if we don't have some hand on the wheel of how human beings are going to transact across the internet, we get left out. And that's not good if you're a nation state. So maybe this is the prudent protection against the worst elements of crypto malarkey, but it also looks like this other thing, at least to me. Jeff John Roberts, Fortune. Coinbase says it received a license to operate in Bermuda. Source: the company plans to launch an offshore derivatives exchange in Bermuda as soon as next week. Very much in the crypto malarkey sphere. I'm sure that there are, sort of mathematical reasons why Bermuda is the right choice, but I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in the boardroom, the executive conference room, where the conversation was had to make the decision about Bermuda, given FTX flaming out in such spectacular fashion, uh, rapid unscheduled disassembly, if you will. Congratulations, SpaceX. For Coinbase to choose to go and do business there, it just like it looks bad. But I don't think many people are really going to care about those optics. What they're going to care about is, can Coinbase provide meaningful utility to those customers that want to do business in uh, financial instruments that you can't uh, offer in the United States. I'm not a finance dick. That's my extremely limited understanding of why you would want to run a business unit offshore. But we'll see. Financial Times, internal presentation. Google plans to deploy generative AI in ads, allowing advertisers to supply creative material which will be quote unquote remixed to create campaigns. No surprise here. If you're Google, just like Microsoft driving OpenAI technology into the Office suite as quickly as it can, if you're Google, you have to drive it into not only your productivity suite, but your ads business, because that's the thing that prints money. I look at this and a lot of the other stories around AI, and the phrase that's slowly been coalescing in my brain is nothing is real. We're about to live through something similar to the uncanny valley that computer graphics experts have talked about for decades, right? This like, it's not perfect, but it looks perfect, or it looks just perfect enough. Actually, maybe that analogy doesn't hold, because as we saw on Tuesday, someone is able to use generative tools to fake out Sony's photography judging panel and win a World Photography Award. So the idea that the advertising units that are going to come out of Google's, campaign building products and tools will have AI injected into them is just another expression of this thing where you're going to see stuff on screens, on billboards, on television, all over the place. And as the average human being, you're fundamentally not going to be able to tell whether it was authentic or synthetic. And the phrase to me that captures that is nothing is real. Buckle up. Bill Toulis, Bleeping Computer. NCC Group measured a record 459 ransomware attacks in March 2023, up 91% month over month and 62% year over year, saying the surge is likely due to exploits of Fortra's GoAnywhere MFT. I had a moment to look up what GoAnywhere MFT is. It's a secure file transfer tool. And I don't have a clever hashtag for this category yet, but the sort of the trailing indicators of enterprise software becoming the floor of the user experience, this feels like part of that. There's a tool that is designed and offered as a secure way to transfer files, and it turns out there's an exploit in it, and it's caused almost 500 incidents of private or personal information being held for ransom. That's bad. And the idea that the market for functionality that allows you to securely transfer files between machines, between systems, between networks, between users, as a nerd, I kind of thought that was a solved problem. I thought everyone understood what the set of tools are which are mature enough and capable enough and well cared for enough to do this job. So the idea that there are still sort of newcomers or entrants into this market, I have no idea how long GoAnywhere has been in this market. They may not be a newcomer, but they're clearly causing harm unintentionally. And that's unfortunate. I would hope, I don't know, plant a long bet by the end of this decade. Could we have ransomware not be a thing anymore? Would that be possible? We could all agree on what the appropriate set of secure information transfer tools are. We'll see. Lawrence Abrams, bleeping computer. The US, the United Kingdom, and Cisco warn Russian hacking group APT28 is deploying custom malware on Cisco iOS routers, allowing unauthenticated access to the devices. I don't remember what the acronym iOS stands for here with regard to Cisco routers, so we'll set that particular detail aside. This is cyber warfare, right? Like this is Sparta. Like this is what it looks like, right? It's not like we're gonna hack a jet airliner and cause mass death and destruction, although let's not count our chickens. Let's all touch wood and hope that that never happens. There's a significant deployment of computing hardware somewhere in multiple locations, right? God knows how many customers there are for this form of Cisco router, but if an exploit for that particular device can be found, a hacking group sponsored by a nation state or not, could just be a high net worth individual that wants to cause just enough mayhem in the global financial markets in order to pull off a hedge and make a quick $50 million. This is what's going to happen. And so that's the phrase, right? This is the day of phrases. Uh, this is cyber. Melissa Heikkila, MIT Technology Review. OpenAI, which may have trained its models on people's data without consent, faces legal stakes in the EU, which has strict privacy laws and is conducting probes. May have trained is bearing a lot of weight. It will take a while. The judicial process is slow, arguably by design. But something tells me if we get to discovery, we will not see a trail of discussion and dialogue and communication between OpenAI and Getty Images about, hey, can we scrape a bunch of the imagery that you make available on the public web and feed it into this machine that we're going to use to run our business? My guess is that conversation didn't take place. So it will be extremely interesting to see how this develops. Jay Peters, The Verge. Bluesky for Android is now available on the Play Store after launching on iOS in February of 2023, but the service is still invite only. It is invite only. I got my first batch of invites and I couldn't be happier. I think there's a sort of nascent possibility that social media, that's a terrible phrase, that going slowly and being intentional about how one wants to conduct oneself in environments like this is a really good thing to consider given the last 15 odd years of living with tools like this, tools that allow an individual to have an identity and to represent themselves and to express themselves either into the ether for anyone or directly to a set of people, directly to one person, all of the things that we all understand if you use Snapchat or Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn. There have been a couple of instances that I've seen in using Bluesky for the last week that underscore this. Users who appear and have large existing presences on Twitter who bring an attitude to how they engage and how they express themselves that it's not what you want. It's not the energy that anybody needs more of in 2023. I would argue that if you're lucky enough to get an invitation and to start to use Bluesky in this early days, I mean, again, the team is actively building a protocol. They are using the network every day. They're taking feature requests. They are absolute heroes in terms of the level of output that they are generating right now. If you're lucky enough to show up there, really ask yourself, what do I want to see in this network, right? To the extent that I build a community or that I find a set of like-minded people, or because it's a global network, you find people that just happen to snap to your particular time zone when you're awake versus when you're not awake, when you're online versus when you're AFK. Really ask yourself, like, do I want to continue to fight old battles, or do I want to do what uh, uh, a user Burb that I saw last week say? Um, we're going to forgive old beef. Like, let's move forward. Let's take an opportunity to start with a fresh sheet of paper and assume, until proven otherwise, that everybody else that's showing up and bothering to spend their time to talk to strangers is doing so because they believe that talking to other people is a net positive for themselves, for the other people that they're talking to, for community and society writ large. So, welcome, my Android brothers and sisters. It's going to be great. Jess Weatherbed, The Verge. Meta's Oversight Board supports Meta's content moderation actions during the pandemic, but asks Meta to assess its impact on public health and human rights. Does anybody else feel sort of I'm your parent and I'm going to take it really easy on you energy from this news? I'm sure the people who are on Meta's oversight board are well-meaning, earnest individuals, but I just can't help but look at it and think, are you ever going to push hard enough in order to get this business to make meaningful, substantive changes to its products for the benefit of its users? I just kind of doubt it. Aaron Tilley, Wall Street Journal. Executives, inventors, investors, and lawyers accuse Apple of copying their ideas after talks about partnerships or integrating their tech into Apple products. I once heard a story that Steve Jobs was fond of using a phrase that he attributed to Pablo Picasso, which was good artists copy, great artists steal. I am the last person who's going to defend business as massive and profitable as Apple's under the banner of their artists. However, they are strictly opinionated. You cannot deny that in the way that they build their products, in the way that they talk about their products, in the way that they run their business. And so there does feel like there's something of a, yeah, I'm not at all surprised that various groups of people who went to Apple and said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Apple products and therefore Apple users were able to take advantage of this thing that I made up, or that I am an investor in, or that I am the legal representative for? And Apple politely says, like, yeah, that would be pretty interesting. And then they go and build their own version of it. In the Apple nerd community, we have a term for this: Sherlocking. If you're not as old as I am, you may not be familiar with this term, but there was a third party tool on the Mac which was the singular interface for querying a whole bunch of different data sources. I mean, God, this was pre-Google, maybe? I could get that wrong. Somebody fact check me there. But it was early. And it was called Sherlock. And I think it was maybe in market for 3 years, probably less. Again, love a fact check there. Love a tweet to correct me. Uh, Apple came out with its own thing. They called it Spotlight. They used a magnifying glass. The Sherlock icon had Sherlock Holmes's signature cap and a magnifying glass. Does anybody remember Sherlock today? Does anyone know where that person is? I hope they that they made money, they made hay while the sun shined on them, and that they are doing well today. But I can't get that wound up at the idea that the business which defines the experience of computing for over 1 billion people on the planet is going to provide maximal respect for the ideas and the executions of ideas that anyone they come into contact with has done before them. I just don't see it. And I don't know, maybe that makes me a fanboy or a bad person or something. But Kyle Wiggers, TechCrunch. NYC-based CoreWeave, which provides access to SKUs of NVIDIA GPUs in the cloud, raised a $221 million Series B at a $2 billion valuation, bringing its total funding to $371 million. Not surprised to see this. Cloud, the business of providing compute as a service, which a kid with a laptop to a young company to a Fortune 1000 company can take and turn on and off like a spigot, or a dial, right? It's not a binary state. Like, how much GPU compute do you want? CoreWeave will sell it to you. It strikes me as an especially smart business to be going into at this moment, where all of the AI driven tools depend on GPUs, because the way that software is designed, it is particularly well suited to the way semiconductors inside of graphics processing units are engineered. So, Brad, keep it up. Financial Times. a look at India Stack, a set of government-backed APIs on which third parties can build apps integrated with state services for payments, loans, and more. This also has something of a crisis of authority flavor to it, but quite frankly, in a I think a majority positive way. The state of India, being the representative, the macro representative of over 1 billion people that reside in India, getting into the business of providing as much information as they see fit to provide to any and all comers. I'm sure there are some caveats about who and what you need to be in order to get access to this set of APIs, but making that data available in a machine readable, machine consumable, machine composable fashion, awesome. I'm sure there will be applications of systems like these which make people's hair stand up, but I'll again reference like the before times when I was much younger. There were entire businesses that were built around trying to facilitate police departments to produce information about law enforcement actions that they took in ways that could be consumed, composed, expressed in software. That's a useful tool, right? You could envision a world where people get a better understanding of where violent crime is occurring if the information that the law enforcement agency is generating about incidents of violent crime is made available in a way that is better than we ship a PDF file every day or every month or every quarter and you can choose to read it or not. Like, this is a good thing. I look forward to hearing more about what the first set of tools people are going to build on top of India Stack. And I look forward to hearing about USA Stack. Kyle Wiggers, TechCrunch. Stability AI debuts Stable LM, its first suite of instruction fine-tuned LLMs in alpha, starting with 3 to 7 billion parameters with 15 to 65 billion parameter versions to follow. I'm not well educated enough in this space yet, so I'll simply say nothing is real, the arms race edition. Alex Heath, The Verge. Snap expands My AI to all users for free and says the chatbot can now be added to group chats and recommend AR filters or places and will soon generate photos. Related, Amanda Silberling, TechCrunch. Snap expands its revenue share program to accept creators with 50,000 plus followers and 25 million plus monthly views, and says its TikTok rival Spotlight has 350 million monthly users. Snap building some form of chatbot capability into its core product only makes sense. It is, I think, very quickly going to be shown to be table stakes. If you have a group chat experience and your users are not able to employ some form of chatbot in that environment, it's all the more reason to go looking for a different environment to talk to people. Which is not to say that that's easy. Group chats are some of the stickiest user experiences in the game. Just ask iMessage users. The related story, though, I think it's more, well, before we get to the related story, the idea that Snap's AI implementation will generate photos is, again, nothing is real. The related story about its revenue share program, though, I think is interesting, if only because Twitter just recently lowered the bar on its revenue share offering, being able to subscribe to a user significantly. If I remember correctly, you used to have an account with 10,000 followers. The bar is now 500 followers. And there are a couple of other criteria in order to show that you are a regular and earnest user of the network. But this, I think, is part of, if not the prime battlefield for, what I've been calling social media Highlander. What does it take as a user in the system in order to begin to benefit monetarily from using the system? That, to me, is the big question for many of these tools. And the fact that Snap is opening its doors is great. I wonder what percentage of the Snapchat user base have 50,000 followers or more. Maybe that's the tipping point below which there's not really any money to be made for users without that follower number. But I think this is part of where the war is going to be won or lost, is how easy is it on one social media tool or another to go from being a regular user to having some monetary skin in the game. Matt Novak, Forbes. Twitter suspends Wired's Del Cameron for reporting on anti-trans activist Matt Walsh's hacked account. Wired denies violating Twitter's hacked materials policy. I'm certainly not familiar with the details here, not familiar with Matt Walsh, not familiar with Del Cameron. Is there a defensible journalistic imperative to report on prominent Twitter users having their accounts compromised? Yeah, absolutely. That's news. It should be out there in the open. Wired's as good an outlet to do that as anywhere. The idea, however, that Twitter is taking action because they believe that Wired's coverage, or Cameron's coverage on Wired's behalf, Cameron's coverage for Wired, may be in violation of its policy on redistributing hacked material, which is to say, content that you got by illegal means. Frankly, it's a good thing, right? Like, that's what we want from these tools. We want them to have some bedrock of policy. And as an individual, I think it is perfectly reasonable to say, yes, if you have reason to believe that the content that was just published on your network was ill-gotten, you may want to take action on the account or accounts which published it. This is a particularly fraught piece of policy because the previous instance where it was deployed to great fanfare was the New York Post story about Hunter Biden's laptop being found, right, and content on the laptop being made available, being out in the wild. I have no interest in getting into that particular issue. Suffice it to say that while I generally feel that the content moderation is something that the platform should do less of and encourage its users to take responsibility for, publishing material which may or may not have been acquired illegally, it's a thing where I would argue the platform has more of an imperative to deal with, right? This is akin to you scrape a camcorder copy of the Barbie movie out of a movie theater and you put it on YouTube, right? Like, YouTube has an obligation to deal with that. So good on Twitter for exercising its policy. We'll see whether or not it proves to have been the right move. Yogita Khatri, the block. Berachain, a bear-themed crypto project building a layer 1 blockchain on the Cosmos SDK, raised $42 million in a private token round led by Polychain Capital. There is an aspect of crypto malarkey here. The investor that led the investment in a blockchain based business is itself a blockchain based business. So take that for whatever you think it's worth. However, the idea of new L1s, new base layer chains getting out into the wild, I think it's a good thing. Again, blockchains over crypto. We need mechanisms of consensus that can scale. And while L1s at the moment don't scale particularly well, having L1s means you can build more L2, L3, Ln. And that is, I think, fundamentally a good thing for the ecosystem. So congratulations, Bear Crew. Go forth and do great things. Christian Sandor, CoinDesk. TransUnion, one of the 3 major credit agencies in the United States, will provide credit scores for individuals when they apply for loans on blockchain-based protocols. Talk about a teeter-totter of a story. On the one hand, sounds like a good thing to the extent that an individual human being has taken steps that fundamentally change their credit worthiness. The major credit information bureaus ought to take in that information and adjust their calculus. On the other side, though, there is, again, often today, a whiff of crisis of authority, a whiff of traditional mechanisms for sort of evaluating, examining, expressing, manipulating the worthiness from a financial or fiscal perspective of an individual human being is what credit reporting agencies have done for quite some time, and there is tremendous anxiety amongst millions of people, at least in America, if not all over the world, about their credit worthiness. Blockchain tools, cryptocurrency tools, DeFi tools can represent an alternative. I'm not saying they do today. I'm saying that's what's possible. And so there is this feeling of sort of being caught in the middle here of, do we continue to vest our trust in the institutions of old, or do we move forward? We'll see. Karen Freifeld, Reuters. Seagate agrees to pay $300 million to settle with the United States Department of Commerce for shipping over $1.1 billion worth of hard drives to Huawei, violating U.S. export control laws. Talk about a banger to end the day. This is why crisis of authority is a thing. Like, put on your tinfoil hats for a moment here. This, on its face, looks like U.S. regulators doing a good thing for its constituents, right? Which is to say, the people of the United States. A business, which, if I remember correctly, is still like legally resides within the United States, violated US federal law and sold product to an entity, a foreign business, which the United States government determined was untrustworthy enough that it, through the Department of Commerce, told the entire US commercial ecosystem, you can't do business with these people. So on its surface, it's like, oh, the system is working. However, I went and looked just briefly. The previous financial quarter's results that Seagate published, its total quarterly revenue was $1.8 billion. So they did a deal that is almost worth their entire quarterly nut. And as a result of doing that deal, they had to pay a 27% fine to the government. If you're Seagate, how do you not do that deal? You know what the law is. You know you'll be in violation of the law. You know you will get fined something. You also know, because you look at what federal regulators have done in your industry and other industries over time, roughly speaking, what the scale of the fine would be, and you bake it into the cost of doing the deal, and you're done. Like, this smacks of a private business that is out for shareholder value, rightly or wrongly, which knows that it's going to get in trouble, but that it's more than likely going to amount to a slap on the wrist. You can quibble on that detail. Like, you can debate whether or not, if you do a $1.8 billion revenue quarter, $300 million is a slap on the wrist, or whether that's a material cost. But the point is, as a public company, your job is not to make number go up. Your job is to provide forward-looking guidance so that the rest of the financial ecosystem can deal with your business performance and, act accordingly. So maybe they were able to telegraph they were going to be fined for doing this deal. I don't know. But just like the part of this story that's under the surface of the water is they knew they were going to get fined. And they knew that the fine wasn't going to be an existential threat. So they broke the law knowingly. And the regulator, either for lack of want or lack of legal capability, took an action, but not an action that, again, imagine you're Seagate. Are you less likely to do another deal like this in the future? Or do you just recognize that there's going to be a 25, 30% tax in the form of having to pay fines for violating federal law? Let's go do the deal again. I don't know.